I think we are live now. So, hey guys, welcome to the second episode of Unboxing DevRel. Today, the guest who is joining us is Riyam, who is the iOS engineer himself turned DevRel. He is currently working at codemagic.io. And over to you, Rudrang. I think people would like to know about you.
So, hi everyone, my name is Riyam and I used to work as an iOS engineer and more of a freelancer person. And last December, I turned into the developer relations position working at CodeMagic. So, just to give a brief introduction, CodeMagic is a mobile CI/CD platform, and I'm working on advocating and helping the iOS community.
Okay. So the very first thing that comes to my mind, Rudrang, when I was listening to your introduction, was you joined the Reveral role last year, right? Around November, December. So what made you join this role? Because you were a iOS engineer before, just like me. So I'm curious to know ki, what came to your mind that you thought that, okay, let's get into this role.
So, like, there's a brief history for this, uh, what you call for this choice. So, if I go back to 2020, I was working as an intern in a startup, and I worked on the widgets feature of their application. And at that time, Apple had recently introduced this new framework, and there were not many resources available. So when I was done working on this feature for a month, I really wanted to write about the feature that I worked on, and so that all the developers out there can learn from our journey of working on the widgets. So I really wanted to write, and I that feeling of writing was more than the writing the code itself. So
Okay.
at that time, I realized I wanted to go into a field where this is possible. I'm getting paid for this, and
Mm-hmm.
I think in 2021, in the beginning of 2021, I got a offer to write as a technical writer, where I was working on where I would write on Swift language and Swift UI, and
Okay.
it was an amazing experience, right? Getting paid for what you are doing, what you
Yeah,
are
why not?
loving to do. Why not, right? So
Exactly.
that's how I got into freelance technical writing as well, and there was a chain reaction. Like when I posted the first article, another developer advocate reached out to me that if I wanted to write for them,
Okay.
why not, right? And
Yeah.
that created a chain reaction. I was getting more requests, and I was just taking all the work I could.
Mm-hmm.
And in December, I also wrote for Code Magic. I wrote like two articles before joining this role, and
Okay.
they reached out to me that if I wanted to apply for this role of developer relations engineer. And before that, I had no idea what this role is.
Okay.
I only knew that these people go out and tour the world, and they have this amazing life out there. And
Okay.
uh, when I read the job description, it felt very comfortable for me, and I told them that let's do this. And we discussed the compensation for this role, and I agreed with that. And so they gave me an assignment where I had to create an hypothetical feature and
Okay.
create an action plan accord for this. So it was like, so let's say we are releasing a new feature, and you want to create a action plan for like 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, and for the whole year ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Action
wrote
plan
like,
for what? Like how to launch that or what?
so let's say that the developer team has launched that feature. Now we
Okay.
want to market it to the developers. So
Mm-hmm.
there's one feature article that goes live with that explains that we
Mm-hmm.
have this new feature. There's one feature video that goes live with that, and there's
Okay.
a few more articles that explains the feature in more detail, and then action
Okay.
plan on how we are going to promote it and distribute it. So
Mm-hmm.
I was given like 2 weeks for this, and I really enjoyed the
Mm-hmm.
process of doing the assignment, and I didn't
Right.
care about the result, like if I'm getting accepted or not. So when I
Yeah.
gave that assignment back, and after 2 days they got back to me that they will be happy to offer me this position, and I was like, I just signed it on the spot.
Again, why not?
Why not?
Right. So, Rudrang, it's been almost like 4 months for you that you are into this role. So, what have you understood about this role? Like, what is developer advocacy, or you can say developer relations, according to Rudrang?
So first thing, that developer relations and advocacy is hard. So it is hard. So you have to be very conscious about your time management and how you are dividing all your priorities and your time according to the task. And for me, it is more about reaching the developer. So it is marketing for developers, in a
Right.
sense that, because if you are reaching out to the developers, if you are a developer first company and you're reaching out to them as a marketing person, I don't think that they would just agree with you
Entertain
on the spot.
entertain that person. Yeah.
And if you are a developer yourself, you understand the pain points, you are dog feeding the future features yourself in your own apps. You know that what pain points or any problem the developer can face.
Mm-hmm.
And when you reach out to them with that mindset, it's very comfortable having conversation with them, because you are not selling them anything. You are just having a conversation and trying to understand what problems they are facing.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, in a hindsight, that's developer relations for me.
And what is your approach towards this role since you have joined it? Like, what do you actually do at the workplace?
So right now, because of this pandemic, it is mostly content heavy because we cannot go out and give talks.
Mm-hmm.
And like all the image I had of other people who are touring around the world and enjoying themselves, that's not possible as of right now.
Right.
So it's mostly that I'm a more of a content person, so I really like to write articles on and experimenting with other stuff. So right now it's mostly content for me, and I
Okay.
haven't gone into the video world right now. And for this month, it is mostly podcast and talking in meetups.
Okay. So, what all things do you think a developer advocate is expected to perform as a part of his or her role? Like, we have various things, right? We have content creation, we have community management, we have the coding aspect as well, somewhere down the line. So, what is the most like frequent thing for you to be done from your end, like basically at your workplace, and what is generally like the role is according to you?
So like let's break it down into like two parts. The first is that it depends. Because if you're a developer advocate, it if you're a developer advocate in a big company, you are in a more specified role where you are given one task and you have to work on that. But if, let's say, if you are in a startup, you may have to wear a lot of hats, like you're working on the content community, and maybe also talking as a customer support. So in my role right now, we have a well-defined team where we have a customer support and sales team differently. So my role right now is mostly on content side and going and talking in podcast and meetups and conferences as we get along in the year. I think you are on mute.
Yeah. So what is the approach basically when you're trying to create some content? So basically you said that you're more interested towards the blog part, right? You are more into that thing. So what is your approach when you write a certain article, suppose on a certain topic? Do you try to pitch it in a way that somebody gets intrigued by it, or do you try to just make it possible for the other person to consume that topic? Nothing else, nothing more than that. Because you said that it is more of like developer marketing, right? Whereas my opinion says that I don't try to merge marketing with the developer advocacy role. So please, can you please just explain that part for me?
So let's also divide this part into two parts. So it's the first one is related to the features that we are working on. Let's say we are so I will just give two practical examples from the work I did in the past 2 months. So we released this new feature where you can test your Mac OS apps, like test the UI part of your Mac OS apps, and only a few providers out there have this feature integrated. So I wrote an article that explains how you can simply use macOS UI testing in your applications, and this was on the feature part. Second was on a part on remote caching, where I experimented with a tool called XC Remote Cache by Spotify. They had this claim where they said that the local build speeds can be speed up by up to 70%, and that was a huge number. So it was really curious. I was really curious and wanted to experiment with more on that. So that article was related to the experimentation part, and I don't expect the developers to join code magic because of that feature, but it was an experimentation article that gets the developers to irk their curiosity more.
So have you used Code Magic on your any personal project yourself, or are you in the process of doing that?
So I've been using Code Magic since I started writing applications back in February 2021. So
Hmm.
like I'm not an indie developer, but I love to have my own apps. I think I have 7 apps on the App Store right now, and all
Wow,
of
that's a
them
good
use
number.
Code Magic CI/CD. So
Okay.
earlier it used to be very hard for me to send my apps to the App Store because I was manually doing it. Now I have automated the whole process using Code Magic.
All right, that's awesome. I think having 7 applications live on App Store in itself an amazing thing, and you have all of them integrated with Code Magic. So I think I should also give it a try then, because I have never given a try to such tools before. So I'll look into it. Yeah, so the next thing that that is very popular these days among people who want to get into this role is that how do we make it to this role? Like we all know that content creation, community management, coding, all of that is there. And if that person is having all of those things, what he or she needs to do to get that role in a certain company?
That's a great question, and I don't have a straightforward answer to it.
Mm-hmm.
My approach to it was basically just writing and getting the exposure out there. Like in January, I wrote an article every single day. So, doing that consistently got many eyeballs to it, and I received multiple offers related to the DevRel part as well. So I think when you put yourself out there in the world, you just have a good community on Twitter, and you are writing and publishing on LinkedIn as well. You get exposure, and if you are inclined toward this role, then after having a good command over your content skills and community management skills, you can, I think the job roles comes to you instead of you going and applying for them.
Okay. So it is more of like what I discussed with Francesco. So I was discussing that how do you approach this role? So he almost said the same thing, and I think that holds true for like all three of us, that we all are into content creation. And once you are into content creation and you are actually creating some value, you will definitely get some eyeballs, like some valuable ones, who would be looking at your content and maybe appreciating that as well if it is good. And in through that way, you may get an opportunity. So it will, or it may come to you. You may not have to go to look out for that. But what if somebody wants to go and look out for that? What all platforms or maybe websites or things are there from where people can actually apply for these jobs?
So I'm not aware of any particular sites where you can go and apply, but I think if you're searching on Twitter, like Twitter is a great place for job opportunities. You can find many people who are putting tweets about the job offers they have, especially if it is related to developer relations. I remember this company a few days ago they had this job offer which was paying a great amount of money for a developer advocate role. And
Okay.
but the problem was they wanted a whole team for a developer advocate. So
Okay.
but you get the idea that if you are looking for a developer position, you may find a lot of positions. Even if you're a fresher person, you can
Right.
go and find many opportunities on Twitter. But like mostly it is Twitter for me if I have to go and find a new role.
So how is it like Twitter for you? Because I don't think this concept of getting job from Twitter is that common between devs. Like maybe it is for iOS devs specifically because we are like almost very active on Twitter. But how do you explain to someone how is it actually working on Twitter? What should they do? What next step should they take if they are starting their Twitter journey today? So that in order to get that job, maybe it will take 1 or 2 years because it doesn't happen in a day or two. But what should they do actually after coming on Twitter?
So that's a great question again. So if I go back to my journey in 2019, I started with Twitter because I won this scholarship, the WWDC scholarship, and people were posting their congratulations message there. So I wanted to do it as well, and that's how I started on Twitter. Then after I realized that there's a huge community of iOS people out there, so I started posting my journey of how I'm learning Swift development and working with iOS development, and if I have some tricks and tips to post, or if I'm working on my own app and want some feedback on it, that was a great way to get started with Twitter. And I think after a year, I remember seeing some posts by Apple engineers,
Okay.
and like they wanted software engineers for a particular team. So I just
Hmm.
randomly reached out to them that, are you looking for interns as well? And they said maybe we may have host interns this year. And they asked me to just send me my resume to them, and after 3 months the recruiter reached out to me, and we had a
Wow.
couple of interviews, and that's how I interned with Apple. So just one random tweet on Twitter
And
opened
boom.
a and boom, that like it opened a lot of doors for me.
Right, right. And this is something I think which is happening a lot these days. If somebody is actually following up the trend of, how to operate on Twitter. And I think the key, like you said, including that, I'm saying additionally that the key is to be authentic and be
Hmm.
a value adding creator, even on Twitter, right? Then the things will follow up, right? So
Like
let's
if
come
you're
to the, yeah,
just
sure.
last point, like
Yeah.
I never want to create a content that I don't want to uh, read myself. I don't want to just put it for the sake of it. I write
Hmm.
the content because I want to. Like even my apps, like they're like very basic apps, but I'm very proud to work on them and showcase the recruiters as well.
Yeah. So one thing that is, I think, absolutely true in this case is कि you should have that interest to work in that certain field. Then only it will come naturally to you. Otherwise, you
Hmm.
will start faking it, and I don't really believe in fake it until you make it kind of thing. So I think you should be authentically interested in that certain domain. Then only it may work for you, right? So yeah.
Exactly. I think that's the good path to get into software engineering.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm not saying that
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
people who are actually trying a trick, it will not work for them. It may or it may not. So this is not something which will exactly happen that I'm saying. But yeah, the crux is this key you should be very authentic with whatever you are doing, even on Twitter. So the thing is, Rudrang, that we have discussed a lot about how to create content, how to be having a good presence on these social media platforms. Let's talk about the community management part now. Like what I used to understand like 1 or 2 years before about community building was you should have x number of people on a certain channel, and you start calling it a community building, and you call yourself a community builder. But later down the years I understood a lot more things about community building. But I would like to know from you, like, what do you think about community building and what is it according to you?
I think I had the same mindset as you, like having like 50,000 followers, that and calling it a community is one thing, but like in this, after having being in this role for the past 4 months and seeing the community we have at work and how the other developers are helping other developers while the support team is not available. And if you see the iOS dev Slack channel that is present there, and how when someone posts a question and people are very ready to answer it. I think community is a group of people with that have like-minded people. Like that's the simplest definition. Like these are just like-minded developers who want to help each other and want to grow as well as want others to grow as well.
Right. I completely agree to that. Even if somebody asks me how to explain that, maybe I'll try the same approach. Like it is more of like 100% that I could agree with. But yeah, this is more of it. So, how do you think about creating a community from scratch? Like as a developer advocate, you might be in a scenario where you have joined a company which maybe have started 1 or 2 months before, and you are the very first DevRel hire. Now if somebody asks you to start building the community for them, suppose that certain company is maybe in a video engineering space, like I just took it from somewhere. So what will you do in that case if I give you an example?
I think I haven't been in a community management role as of yet, and I don't know how to officially approach that position. But if I
Mhm.
was in a community management role, or a developer relations role for that matter, and I will try to That's a hard question because I haven't created a community myself.
Yeah, but it is more of like it can be spontaneous. I'm not expecting any correct answers for this. It is more of like how would you approach even if somebody asks you today, right?
So, like, if I wanted to have like minded people in my community and who are working towards this particular product, so first thing I would want to do is to promote it and try to distribute it in a way that all the people who I want in that community get the message out there and are able
Hmm.
to join the community. Let's say on the website we put out banners that we have a community that you can join, or you can
Right.
send newsletters on related to it, your weekly newsletters of the company. You can post it
Hmm.
on Twitter. Like there are multiple uh, uh, Twitter space, Twitter communities as well. We have LinkedIn
Right.
groups, Facebook groups that you can post into. Like the first part of building a community is getting the people
Right.
themselves.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And how about like suppose you have to create a Discord server yourself, right? I have also like boiled it down to this point. Now you have come to Discord server. So what will you do next? Suppose it's in the iOS domain only. Let's make it more easy for you. Now what will we do?
I think I will have the same approach. Like, I will start by getting the people who are in my Twitter audience and my LinkedIn audience to join that Discord group, telling the features, the perks they get. The perks is basically that we are discussing the problems that we have. And
Right.
the second step would be to go beyond my current audience, which is into more Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups or any other Discord servers as well, or Slack channels.
All right. All right. Enough of Slack channels and Facebook groups now. Coming to the next part of it, which is what do you think should be or can be an approach? Like there should be, not always should be. Since we are iOS developers, we are advocating for iOS developer, and we are more of like an iOS developer advocate. Even my role is also iOS developer advocate. So, what is your approach going forward? Would you remain in the same domain of iOS, or would you try to become a journalist in tech space? Or what do you think about that, as well as what do you think about people who join as a fresher these days, just coming out of from college and they join as a DevRel role? Do you see any difference in between that and a person who already has some developer experience in their professional life, be it for freelancing work or be it a full-time job? Do you see any difference, or do you see any perspective change in between all, in these in between these two things?
I think that's a like a lot of questions included in one.
You can
So
answer one by one.
one by one. So
I'll repeat it for
let's
you.
say if you are a fresher who is joining DevRel for the first time, I think so. If I go back to my own journey, I started with iOS development back in 2018, and I worked with multiple startups. Like I interned with six, and then freelanced with four more. So I had a good understanding of how the iOS industry works and how you can progress into it. So
Okay.
getting into developer relations and advocating to the iOS community was a good challenge for me. But if you it's my own opinion that if you just want to jump into developer relations without understanding the product itself, I
Right.
you can understand the product as you go forward in your journey, but having a good understanding of the product itself before you join as a developer advocate would immensely help you. So I have seen how the developers, like the engineers themselves, get into this role after they have worked for a few years on the product itself.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's true.
if I have to give a, like if you are a fresher and I have to give an advice to you, I think understand the product well, or for which
Hmm.
you are going to advocate for. That would
Hmm.
immensely help you in the long run, in the
Yeah.
position itself.
So are you answering that later part of the question with this?
Yes, so like if you
So the
truly
latter part
believe.
was more of
Mhm.
like, let me like rephrase it for you. What I was saying was that suppose somebody has joined as a DevRel, just coming out of college, and someone who has have experience in the developer role itself, and then he or she is joining the DevRel role, then what could be the possible differences between these two guys? One who is actually having the developer experience, because like let me give my opinion on this, then I'll go to you. So what I think is that once you are a developer yourself, you start understanding the process and the things that come your way as a developer. Suppose we are integrating something into our iOS application, then I do understand that pain, how to do that, what can be the possible ways I will look out for, you know all of those things. Whereas if a certain person jumps into this role right away from the college, and I'm not saying that he or she hasn't done anything before, maybe they were developing something in their college time itself, will that make any difference, or do you think it's almost equivalent?
I think the experience matters. Like the developer, as a developer or an engineer, the experience that you have gained, because you, over the years, you understand what the other developers out there may face, and because you have faced that yourself for a couple of years. And let's say if I'm just building apps on storyboards or doing programmatic UI, I know that if someone is working in a team and doing storyboards, it may not be as easy because of the merge conflicts. And if
Right.
I have to advocate to a product related to this, I know the pain points that other developers face. But if you haven't worked in this area at all, I think it may be a little difficult to understand what the other developers are going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also feel the same. But
And
again, I would say
mhm.
that this is not something that I or maybe you are trying to preach, but
No,
this is
no.
something we feel about it, right?
Yes, like what I have experienced from my own journey.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not
All
a
right.
common
So,
advice or
yep.
that you should just blindly follow it.
Exactly. So since we are already talking about the pain points and all of those things that developers go through, let's talk about the pain points of a developer advocate. Like, what do you think are the challenges in this role? And from your personal experience, you can share some of them, like if you're allowed to, or if you want to talk, more generic about this, then that's your choice. But yeah, the question is, what are the challenges in this role?
I think one of the it was mostly a mindset change that I felt that I struggled with, and the second was with time management and prioritizing the work that I wanted to do. So
Hmm.
for the first one, let's say as an iOS engineer, I have a lot of Jira tickets on my head, and I know that this week I'm going to just solve all of these. And when I've solved the features or shipped a feature, I know that my work is done for now, and when a bug arises, then there will be another Jira ticket that I will have to solve. But in developer advocacy, there's not a fixed path, uh, as per my opinion, where you have.
Do you think that is because you are a solo developer advocate in your company, or do you think that maybe there may be a structure that is followed where there is a whole team of developer advocacy?
That may be a good point. Like if I compare to other companies who have like a head of developer relations, and then there are senior developer relations manager, and under them they have developer advocates. They may have a
Right.
better structured way in which they are approaching the problems. But right
Mm-hmm.
now, as I'm the solo one, I think I'm just experimenting with my own time and how I am approaching the problems.
So
And
how
the
do you
time. Mhm.
communicate your goals with the team? Like, do you decide your goals yourself, or do you first discuss with your team, like all the members who are there in this domain, particularly in your company? I don't know, like maybe there are some marketing people or some other sales guys with whom you discuss. By the way, with whom you discuss, let's talk about that first. Like,
So
which team do you discuss that first?
So I directly report to the CEO, and we discuss this in our weekly meetings on the
Okay.
developer relations approach. And then in the marketing meetings, we discuss like the work I have done and anything that is related to the marketing people.
All right. So you don't have to deal with a lot of marketing people every day, right? Like it's more of like you just report to them whatever you have done. It's more
So
of like that.
it's not reporting to them. It's mostly like telling them that what I have done or
Yeah.
what I want from
You
them.
just change the word, telling them that what you have done. All right. But the main discussion part goes to just discussing that with the CEO itself.
Exactly.
All right. That's interesting. Okay.
And
And
the
what
second
do you?
challenge
Yeah.
and the second challenge I am like I face is mostly related to time management, because let's say this March is going to be a hectic one where I am focusing on two podcasts and two speaking at two meetups, and
Okay.
then there may be and two articles as of now, and it's first March. So I have six things on my plate for this month, and it may grow as the month goes along. So
Hmm.
my main thing is how I'm going to prioritize all of these tasks that I have in my hand. So
Right.
right now I have found a way that when I block a whole day for something, that works pretty good. Let's say
Okay.
like if there are 5 days, there are 5 days in a week. So let's say I'm writing an article on Monday and Tuesday because I like to write. So starting the week writing is great for me. And then if I'm working on the list things I want to speak at the podcast, or creating the presentation and the script for the meetups, I will try to do
Right.
it on Thursday and Friday.
Okay. So that's how you distribute all your tasks.
Yes.
And do you decide, like, you already decide the deadlines for all these tasks, or do you do it one day at a time? Like, do you decide, okay, on this particular day I'll do this? So do you
So I
decide
try
it for the
to
whole week already, or do you decide it each day? Okay,
so
for this day I'll do this part only, and next day I'll take this one.
I try to decide it on Monday itself, but you know that everything you plan doesn't go as you planned. And there may be days, like I think I
Completely
had this
understand
one
that.
week where I wasn't able to work on some of the tasks that I had for that week. So
Hmm.
rolled over to the next week, and it was okay. Like at that time I was like, this is going to be a very big mess up, but I realized, like, when I look back, it's okay to just miss one or few tasks that you have, and it's not a priority one, so you can just roll
Hmm.
over to the next week.
Okay, so are these the only ones, like all the pain points that you have, or there are some more?
So according to you, what do you think other pain points we have?
I think we share almost similar thoughts on this. I also face the time management problem working in this role, because you have a lot on your plate and you have to decide and prioritize what you should finish first. And that completely depends on what all targets you have, right? So we generally have quarterly targets. So
Mm-hmm.
based on that, we approach things. And I have failed in the very first month to plan out these things, but I'm learning on the way how to do that.
Do
And
you think
yeah,
having a like
yeah,
quarterly plan helps? Because
I cannot really judge that point yet, because it hasn't been even one quarter
a
that I have
quarter.
joined this role, right? So I'm in this quarter currently. It will end at the March end, so then I will able to answer this particular question. But I'll ask you, like, for the last 3-4 months, how much has it worked for you in terms of the output? Because I don't know, do you work like on a quarterly basis or not, like approach your goals on a quarterly basis or not? But I would ask, okay, for last 4 months, have you analyzed all the outputs that you have created so far, or how do you analyze that?
So we usually plan monthly and then break it down weekly. And
Okay.
I think February didn't start well. We The first week we didn't it didn't go as we planned.
Mm-hmm.
But by the end of the month, I think I was able to do a good comeback and everything went well. If I just look at the March February scenario, so
Okay.
this is another thing, is how you what you say, how do you actually measure the impact you are making?
Right.
Like, we don't have numbers, or do you have numbers that you count on?
We do have certain numbers in mind when we plan for a quarter. And again, I would say that we will analyze that once the quarter is over, but we do
Mm-hmm.
it on a weekly or a monthly basis as well, right? So we see that chart going up or not, like we see
Mm-hmm.
all those hiccups that it is taking and why it is taking, and we tweak our plan based on that as well sometimes. So if we see, okay, there is a surge because of certain activity that we performed, then we make a note of it and try to recreate that later on sometime. So we try to analyze things in this way. Also, I think for the numbers visibility, we have been using a lot of tools, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you get that visibility from there. But to analyze if you have done a good job or not, you should have a target in mind. Then only you would be able to justify that, okay, this was my threshold, or maybe this was my benchmark, so I have set it or not.
I
So
think in
this
the
is,
initial months,
yeah,
having that target is kind of what disheartening, because when you're just starting, when you're in a company that has started with this developer relations uh, activities in the first few months, you won't magically get the result in the first few months itself, and it is a slow
very true.
process. So I knew it from, I think I knew it, I realized it in February itself, that it is going to be a long marathon and not a sprint kind of
Exactly.
thing, where I am just shipping a feature and it's doubling the revenue or something.
True
So
that.
so
I also believe that I think this is also coming from my personal experience in content creation. Like
mhm.
whenever you create a certain content, you don't really say beforehand that I will get these many views on it, and in how much time period I will get that. You just assume that maybe I'll get these many, and I don't know the timeline for it exactly, but I'll do my best to rank it at the best possible number so that it gets more discoverability.
I
So
think
yeah, I agree that it takes time.
when we talk about the external numbers, that is not in our control.
Yeah.
Like one thing I realized on working on an article where we ranked really high, but the developers searching for that term wasn't as much as we expected. So
Okay.
that showed in the article reports as well. Even though the article, according to me, was one of the best out there, but
Okay.
still, it's
Yeah,
disheartening
that's very true.
because
So is
the
it about searching that keyword, or is it about they came to the blog and then they bounced back?
so
It's
it's
about the
about the
searching part, right? They were
searching
not
part.
searching enough. Yeah. So there are a lot of aspect, like if we talk more pain points, then I think these could be some of them where you sometimes feel helpless in terms of analyzing how this could have been done, like how to backtrack whatever activity you have done. So we use these terms UTM and all of those things. So I'm new into this, but yeah, I'm also
KPIs.
making my way.
What are your KPIs?
So let's not talk about that. I think I should be asking you the same question, that how do you measure, or how somebody who is your lead measure your performance so far?
So right now, I surprisingly don't have any KPIs, anything to
Hmm.
measure on. We are monitoring the views and the page per minute on my articles, but I don't have a strong KPI to measure the success or the impact that I'm making.
Hmm. Okay, but how do you see it can be like, what can be the possible parameters on which it can be measured?
I think it's very hard to say it, and like it's not simple. Like the
Hmm.
answer is that it's not simple to just measure the work you are doing. You can
Right.
say it like, let's say I'm tweeting something, and the impressions that came on that tweet can be one
Hmm.
measure, but that's not something that it's important.
Right.
Like you can have like 10 thousands of views on your blog post, and the developers are just bouncing back from that. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult to understand what is the key performance indicator for your performance.
That's true. And there is, I think, a lot of confusion in this particular pipeline as well. Whereas we are talking about how many views do you get on the blogs. And there is one more layer to it where you are actually converting those views into actual customers, right?
Exactly.
And then it is becoming a business. So,
But
what
that is not our job.
yeah, I'm coming to that question. So, how much important do you think DevRel's job is to connect this particular dot where you are getting the views for your certain content and linking that to this dot where you are actually converting them to a customer of that product? So, how much important is our role in this case to have that conversion?
So from what I see, it is that when I am writing in blog post, it is usually to make the developer aware about our feature, and so that they
Hmm.
can derive value from it. And if they are facing that problem, they can use our product and integrate into their workflow and become our customer. But
Okay.
having them as a goal, because having that as a goal is not my primary purpose when I'm even writing or looking at the stats. But
Hmm.
if I have to answer your question, I am biased because I am not into the sales part yet.
Okay.
And I don't think the sales should be important as a developer relations person. What do you
Hmm.
think?
I think the same. Like even sales plus marketing, I would say. I don't even try to mix up marketing with developer advocacy. I think when you try to mix this up, then it becomes a confusion because now you are connecting yourself to those targets as well, which are concerned with the marketing team, not with the developer advocacy role. Whereas you are only representing what your company has made and why it has made it, how it can be improved, and how can you help the other guys, the developers, to implement that or to use that in the real scenario, right? I think this is the boundary line for me. But yeah, there is a lot of mix up going on in a lot of companies, so that happens. But this is my view on this.
Got it. And another aspect that we have not touched is related to the sample projects that we create.
Hmm.
Let's say we are working on a post and we have to create the sample projects, and they should be top notch. Because
Yeah.
recently I got this message from a person who said that they want to go into a field where you don't have to code, or you have to really rarely code. And I was like,
Okay.
bro, I have been working very hard on the coding aspect of in my position, and it's not that where you don't code. Like, I understand that coding is not our primary job role, but you still
Right.
are on a day to day or on weekly basis, you are still interacting with programming.
True. So what is the point then? Like I didn't get the whole part of it.
Like, my point is that when someone says that developer relations
Not about
isn't a
coding.
is not about coding,
Hmm.
so
I think that comes like that particular role is completely different, which is I call it community management, where where you are not expected to actually code or get too much technical, right? You're just managing those people who are already in that community and helping them out. And I don't think that how would somebody help them out if they are not technical themselves, right? They may connect the technical guys with those people who are asking the doubts. That may be the possible scenario how they deal with it. But yeah, that's a different story altogether. But tell me, how is life different for you when we compare it to iOS engineering and now to developer advocacy? What has exactly changed for you? Number one, I can say, okay, coding part, it is much lesser than what you used to do before this. Apart from this,
so
the
so
creativity and all those things.
So one tweet that I vividly remember when I was working as an iOS engineer was that I didn't like working, like writing code as a living. So when
Yeah.
I was as an iOS engineer, my primary job was to make apps for a living.
Hmm.
And like, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so this glitch. So as I was saying that as a developer relations person, I can just experiment with code as much as I want and without thinking, because that's my not my primary job. And like in the past few months, I have experimented a lot, and it's a lot of fun compared to when you're have a deadline on your head, or and like I have been using this phrase a lot, Jira tickets on my head. So
Right.
so not having them on my head, for me it's a day and night difference that I really enjoy.
That you really enjoy. That's the best part of it, I think. And I think you get a lot of learning time as well. Like because comparing it with the technical tasks that we used to get and that we used to complete, it is not that much hectic in terms of consuming our energy. Of course, at some
Exactly.
point of time it is, but mostly it is not. So you get that extra energy for the day, which you can use somewhere else, maybe learning something technical that we are interested in. So I think that's also one of the beauty of this particular role, where you can not just grow in that certain role, but also in some other aspect as well, right?
Like if you're like coding for 8 hours in your day
Yeah,
job, you're not left with that much energy to work on your own apps
exactly.
after work. But right now I can, like as I mentioned earlier, I wrote an article every single day in January,
Hmm. Hmm.
only because I was in this role, and I don't think I could do it as a full-time iOS engineer.
Yeah. And you also see Xcode as a very fresh tool when you don't touch it for 2 3 days, in a
I can
consistent
just
manner.
close it, delete it, do anything now.
Yeah, exactly. So you connect with Xcode with a fresh mind, with a fresh mindset itself, and that's how you get that creativity going with you, right? As far as that creating something new is concerned in the technical aspect. But yeah, so Rudrank, I think we have almost tried to do our best to unbox the DevRel job role today. If there is anything else that you would like to share about this role, then you are more than welcome. Please go ahead with that. Otherwise, I would like to ask you, what would be the final advice that you would like to give to all the people who would be listening to this podcast or who are listening to this podcast currently? What would you tell them?
I think if you are getting into this field, you should explore all the videos, articles related to it to understand the field better. So when you are actually in the game, you know what you are going to face in the next few months. So you don't have any uh, unreliable expectations like you are going out and touring the world, giving conferences. It will happen with me as well, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not the primary goal of your work. And it may be because if you are in a company that has a specified role for this, then good luck with that. But think having that unrealistic expectation is not something that you should start this journey with.
Right. Because this is
And
also
have
not an
fun,
easy thing to do, right?
and have fun in
This is
this role
what you are trying to
because
say, I believe.
yes, it's not an easy role to deal with, especially if you
Yeah.
have bad time management.
You said that again. Okay. Yeah, I think that's true. So with that, I think we will wrap up this session. And thank you so much, Rudrang, for joining us today in this session where we actually kind of talked about a lot of things which I am most interested in, and I believe you are also. So I had a great time talking to you on this. And with DevRelStories.com, we are trying to simplify these things for everyone who is into this space already or who is trying to get into this space of developer advocacy. So please make sure that you check out the DevRelStories.com. And with that said, bye bye everyone, and bye bye Rudrang. Thank you so much once again. I would be looking forward to some more experiences that you would be having in this space because I know you would be having some. And like you talked about the conferences part, I think that hasn't happened yet for any one of us. So we would be having some more stories to share. So please stay tuned. Maybe we will be recording one more podcast over this year on the same show, Unboxing Devil.
And let's
Fingers
meet in
crossed.
person next time to record.
Definitely. I think we already had a plan to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
that didn't happen somehow. But no worries, we will make that happen this year only. It's March only. We have a lot of months left. So yeah, thank you so much, Rudrang. I
And
think
thank
we
you for
can.
having me, Mayank.
Yeah, pleasure. All right, let's end the broadcast then.